Lauren, I'm glad Natalie's here because I couldn't say those so beautifully how she just said that because
I just spoke words.
I didn't have a plan today. So
just on a day-to-day level, it's like when you see something that's wrong, you got to say something, and you see somebody treat somebody differently because of the color of their skin, you have to speak up. So that's like on a day-to-day human.
Walking down the street and you see a black guy, you grab your purse, or whatever, you clutch your purse close. These are all these unconscious things that we take in.
Hey guys, if it's crazy.
All right, go now.
Wait.
Get out of there! Oh my God!
Hey guys, welcome to the Family Mess. I'm Noah, and have a nice day.
Good God!
I love the Family Mess.
Oh.
welcome to the Family Mess Podcast. I'm your host, Ian, and this is my wife and co-host, Natalie. The Family Mess, the podcast about life with kids and all things adulting. Let's start. Hello, Natalie.
Good morning, Ian.
Sunday morning, another recording.
Actually, a morning recording. That doesn't happen.
A morning recording. This is a very special Family Mess Podcast recording today. We decided to do. Oh gosh, we've been a little pressured to do a recording about what's going on.
Not pressured, but we were asked.
We were asked by a couple of folks to do recording on what's going on out in the country now. So we have a guest today on the studio, my friend Lauren. I've known Lauren for, gosh, how many years has it been, Lauren? 20 plus years.
It's got to be more than 20, Ian. You're 40 something.
Oh my God, I'm 43. I'm sorry.
35 years.
35
Were you
years.
like in kindergarten or first grade, Ian?
The history of this is when I first moved to this country, I went to elementary school and I saw Jeff. I didn't know Jeff. And I think one day Jeff started.
Well, who is Jeff?
I said his name. Jeff is my best friend from elementary school. I said his name. Forgive me, Jeff.
See, Lauren, we just talked about that. You see what I mean?
Again.
But that's Lauren's brother. That's Lauren's brother.
That's Lauren's brother, Jeff. And when we went to elementary school, I was a very shy kid, and no one talked to me really. Just a young black kid in the school. Not many black kids in the school, by the way. But then Jeff one day, invited me to his house. It was crazy.
That's weird because Jeff is so quiet.
Yeah. And I guess because I was quiet, he was quiet too. So we kind of had this thing. And so it was weird because I didn't have a lot of friends in elementary school at the time. And he was like the first one to really say, hey, can you come over to my house? I was like, what the heck? Come over to your house? That's never happened to me before. And I was scared. And I remember I had to ask my mom and dad if I could, because to them, it was a big deal to have their son go to this people's homes, Right. So I said, could I go? And my mom's like, yeah, you can go. I don't remember what it was when I went there for the first time, but I remember from the time I went there, the family's always treated me like one of theirs. I mean, literally from third grade to now, Lauren's right. I've always been there almost the entire time with that family, with your grandmother. Gosh.
I don't remember a time you weren't there, Ian. I don't remember my life in Florida that you weren't there, honestly. You were just always there.
Yeah.
You were always part of our life.
Yeah, I literally.
I would have been in kindergarten.
Yeah, I was there. You know what? I was there almost the entire time from when Lauren was small until the entire time. That's unbelievable. So I've known this family for almost my whole life, and they've treated me so good. That's why I hate all this is happening now, because it's not a representation of all people. This family has taken me literally as one of their sons and has loved me the entire time, nonstop. It's crazy. And when your dad passed away, that really bothered me for a long time, because that hurt. Because he really, because I have a father, but he really loved me. So I was like, man, this sucks, because you don't find a lot of people in life that unconditionally love you. But this family took me in and literally took me everywhere with them, everywhere.
Because I don't have the same experience, but as both of us being with Jamaican families, there's a cultural difference. Jamaicans we don't go nowhere. We don't do, if you're not going to somebody's house where you live, where you know somebody to visit or whatever, there's a lot of things that we don't do that American culture does. And for Ian to be able to have been a part of that, I think, Ian, kind of like families you see on TV. You see the families on TV and you're like, oh man, I wish mine were a little bit like that, because when yours isn't. And so I think being able to have experienced that, I think was monumental for him and life changing for Ian, and just the stories that he's told me about your family and how they treated him. And, you know, I mean, even the other day he was saying that you guys helped to pay for his soccer. And I was like, Ian, you know, why don't you pay that forward to another child and go and find another kid now that, you know, you're doing well in life to provide that same thing, because that gave you so much. And when he talks about your dad, and, you know, he became an engineer a lot just because of your dad. He can fix cars because of your dad. I mean, those were major impacts to him as a person and on his life. And so, you know, with all of that, to see where you also now, in what you do, in your work, you know, to advocate for kids. So Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what you do?
Yeah, I know. Ian, you always felt just like one of my brothers. It was Jeff and Ian, my two brothers, you know, and I didn't, that's just how I kind of thought of you. And I'm glad that you were part of our life, because I think you brought a lot of joy, into our world too. You know, we always had so much fun. And you one thing I think about too is like, you really learned from my dad in ways that Jeff and I didn't. You know, you slowed down and paid attention to him, because we didn't know what we had, you know?
Yeah.
And so we never like sat in the garage with him and learned how to fix the cars and stuff. We were annoyed when he would make us fix our cars. But you really paid attention, and I just, you know, I feel like a lot of my dad is in you. It lives on in you.
Oh, I might cry.
Yeah. All right, let's not start with crying.
Oh my gosh.
But you know, I grew up here, obviously, with you and my family, who I really felt very fortunate to have a very loving and good family. Just my mom and dad, like, they demonstrated what it means to be a good person, and I was able to really learn from that. And I didn't always follow those lessons, right? Like, I totally went through a bratty teenager phase, a selfish, you know, bratty teenager phase, and you know, but they really did model what it meant to be a good human. And so after, you know, at college, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I was a particularly good student through high school and college, and it wasn't bad. I was just kind of mediocre, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I kind of had this feeling like I wanted to do something good. And so I joined this program called Teach for America, and it brings like naive, energetic college students into communities that have schools that are really struggling. And then we get trained, and then we are placed in classrooms. And so I became 22 years old. I was a middle school teacher in South Central Los Angeles.
Did you say South Central Los Angeles? South Central?
Yeah, South Central.
I didn't realize that.
Which is just like literally the South Center part of Los Angeles.
That's rough.
And so right on the border of Watts, the school. A lot of my kids lived in Watts that went to the school I taught at, and so became a teacher and loved it. But realized that that my kids had so many barriers in front of them, being mostly Black and Latino, growing up in poverty. A lot of them were immigrants, first generation, and they were smart, brilliant, kind, funny human beings, but they had so many barriers in front of them. And even if, you know, they did everything right, and even if, you know, they had a couple of great teachers and they could be, you know, Einstein level brilliant, and they still were going to struggle to get into college, to overcome the system, right? That's so broken and so against their success. And so I went into policy from that, thinking okay, we gotta address policies. And then I was in policy for a long time. And then I felt, I was just, you know, turned off by policy because politicians are divas and, you know, it's just such silliness. It's not about the issue. It's about interpersonal stuff and ego. And so I left that world and I went more into the direct service and nonprofit, and I trained teachers and moved back here, you know, after 10 years in LA. I moved back here about 7 years ago. really to be closer to my mom, you know, because after Dad passed,
Yeah.
she was alone, and she was doing good, but you know, she had that brain aneurysm.
Yeah, your mom's a fighter, man. Your mom is a fighter.
Oh my gosh, she is a survivor. Like she's going to outlast us all.
Oh,
man.
she will. She will.
But yeah, so I did that work here. I ran the program Teach for America that I joined in LA. I actually started it here in Orlando.
Oh, cool.
And the goal again was to bring new teachers to high need schools that were struggling to get and keep teachers in the classroom. So kids in our community literally were like going through these critical years of school without a full-time teacher. Like, how are you supposed to succeed? Like, this is one of the examples of the barriers, right? How are you supposed to succeed if you don't even have a third grade teacher?
Wow.
Or a kindergarten teacher or first grade teacher? The whole year you have just a rotating group of substitutes.
Really? That happens?
Yeah, I mean, this
that
happens.
literally happens.
I mean, it's not currently happening because schools are out, but like this year, there were probably 100 classrooms that didn't have teachers, and mostly in, you know, schools that serve students who are Black and Hispanic. I mean, that's like the reality. And nobody knows it, right? Nobody knows it because it's just not, they do a news story about it once a year and then everybody forgets it. And so I actually, we struggled to get funding for that program here in Orange County. And I left that program because they hired somebody who has more of a fundraising background. And now that program doesn't even exist. Because people just aren't paying attention to this issue in this community, and it couldn't get the funding that it needed. So it's gone from Orlando now, which is really heartbreaking.
Yeah,
and then where I am now is I started a collective impact initiative, which is like a community-wide initiative to work on equity in the early education space. So healthcare for mothers and children, early education and care for young children, really focused on the birth through 5, which is another huge area of inequity. And Black children and Black mothers are experiencing the worst impacts of this broken system.
Right.
Like to the point of like we're losing lives of children and mothers in ways that we really shouldn't. Like we're a first world country and women are dying in childbirth.
Right. Yeah.
In our community. So that's what we do now, and it's been crazy. I mean, we're still struggling to get support and funding for this project, and my partner and I have really, she does not take a paycheck at all, and there's been months that we haven't gotten paid. But luckily, again, my mom is able to help me with that, and so we're able to keep going. But so that's what I'm doing now. So it's all the work that I've done has been in the kind of education equity space, so making sure all children have access to education, and that is very much about race.
Okay, and what is the name of your organization again? I didn't realize that you were like I know you, but I don't talk to you that often. Ian more so speaks with you, so I'm curious to definitely hear more. But what's the name of your organization?
So our initiative is called Becoming a K-Ready Community. So becoming a kindergarten-ready community. The idea that we have to support our children and mothers to make sure they enter school and kindergarten ready to learn. Because if they enter school behind, I mean, essentially, they're never going to catch up.
Right.
It's just statistically very difficult.
So Lauren, as far as education goes, it seems like you realize, and the education is a big key in a lot of these communities, especially in impoverished communities, to getting out. Correct? I mean,
for opportunity.
It sounds to me like I'm not saying the system's doing this on purpose, but when someone's not educated or has access to proper education, they don't know they have choices. So they're left in an environment where choices are being made for them, and they're left to survive on their own. And if somebody doesn't step in and kind of let them know there's choices, there's consequences. It's just a continual thing that seems to happen. How do you? I have a question. Friends, if you have friends that don't see the way you see things, how do you tell them about it? I mean, from your perspective, do you have a lot of friends that are like, Lauren, why do you keep doing this? I mean, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of friends that are actively saying like, why are you doing this? Because that just wouldn't we just wouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
If they were, they were actively, we're just not gonna, that's not the person who's gonna hang around with me. But I definitely have friends that, I play soccer still.
Oh, wow.
And so I have this whole community of soccer people that aren't friends that I made through work, and a lot of them just don't get it. And it's not so much that they're like, oh, why do you